Hello friends, Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to our broadcast. Today I'm delighted to have a fellow New Yorker and good colleague and friend in the pro-life movement, Maria McFadden Mafucci. And some of you may be aware, I hope you are aware, of the Human Life Review, a key publication within the pro-life movement that advances the arguments on which our pro-life position is based in a strong intellectual manner. And well, as Maria will tell us, she manages that entire project. Maria, good to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's good to be with you too, Father Frank.
So for our viewers that are not familiar with the work that you do, tell us a little bit about your background and your work.
Absolutely. So it's actually a New York story. The Human Life Foundation was created by my dad, the late James P. McFadden, who was at the time working at National Review magazine in Manhattan. And after Roe v. Wade, his life changed. He couldn't believe that the Supreme Court had legalized abortion. And he set about trying to do something about it. And so he created the Human Life Foundation. And we have two main programs. The first is our educational program, which is the Human Life Review, which is a quarterly journal devoted to all the life issues, abortion primarily, but all the life issues that flow from that. And we now also have a very active website with blogs and news items. We're going on well, I should say my father passed away in 1998, and I was working for him, and then I took over the reins. So the foundation publishes the journal, has been publishing it since then, 1975. The winter 1975 was our first issue. We also have a program for pregnancy centers. Back in the 70s, we started matching grants for pregnancy centers, and we continue to that today. And then because of what's been happening in New York recently with Governor Cuomo, we've really stepped up our efforts as a New York-based institution to unite pro-lifers in support of pregnancy centers and against the kind of legislation that we see. So we are a nonprofit organization devoted to life, and I'm now the president, and we're very happy to be doing what we're doing.
You know, you also have a great annual event, right? The dinner in New York City there, where you also give a pro-life award. Tell us a little bit about that.
We absolutely do. And actually, I don't even think we've announced this online yet. Our next dinner, it's called the Great Defender of Life Dinner. This will be our 17th. The first honoree was the great late Congressman Henry J. Hyde.
Yes.
And this year, on October 10th in New York City, we will be honoring Professor Helen Alvarez of the Antonin Scalia Law School, who is a pro-life hero, as I'm sure your listeners know, and also Rich Lowry, who is the editor of the National Review magazine in New York, who has also spoken out eloquently against the abortion legislation of Cuomo. And we're happy to have Washington and New York, because New York, again, has become center of focus in the pro-life movement as of late. So it's a wonderful event. I encourage people to go to our website at www.humanlifereview.com. And I'd like to point out that we now have digital subscriptions available, which include our entire archives online. So it's a wonderful resource for pro-lifers or anyone interested in any of these issues, because at your fingertips you have over 40 years of what's been going on in the movement. And we have the archives in the individual issues. So you really, like if you say what's going on in spring of '84, you would get a great idea by the selection of articles that we have. And finally, our most famous article still is spring 1983, which was when President Ronald Reagan, as a sitting president, wrote Abortion and the Conscience of the Nation for our 10th anniversary issue, or the 10th anniversary, issue. So we invite people to come if they don't know who we are and check us out. It's there's something for everyone. There are legal articles, medical articles, journalism, sometimes fiction, poetry. It's really a review. And we also reprint terrific pro-life columns like your own father, from around the country to give more people the opportunity to see them, because we really need to be educated, and it also creates camaraderie and support when you read these really excellent writers speaking the truth that we all know about the value of human life.
Well, that's right, and every movement has to have its intellectual foundations very strong. People in those movements, certainly in ours, which is the most important human rights cause of all time, the people need to be studying, need to be reading, need to be researching. So it's a great treasure that that you provide, and that all these authors provide, and we're very grateful for it. So New York, as you've mentioned, has become a focal point once again in the whole abortion battle. Summarize for our listeners this really atrocious law. Of course, you know, those of us who are from New York know that the legislature there and now, of course, the current Governor Cuomo have been trying to do this for years. This is not an idea that
Absolutely.
they just had, you know, this year. They've been trying to do this for years, but of course, they've been prevented from doing that because they didn't have Democrat control of the entire legislature and the governor's office. But now with the midterm elections of 2018, the Democrats took over the Senate, and they were able to push this through. Give our viewers just a little summary of what this new law does.
Well, this is a really terrible law. It's called the Reproductive Health Act. But what it does is it takes abortion completely out of the penal code in New York City, takes away any restrictions on abortion up to birth, and even beyond, because if a child is born alive after an abortion attempt, whereas there used to be a requirement that two doctors had to be there to give the child medical care, now that requirement is no longer there. So it is the most radical, abortion up to birth and infanticide in effect. It also takes away any legal penalty for if someone attacks a woman and her child is killed in her womb, because that child has no rights. She cannot bring any charges against someone for the death of her child. And also very disturbing for women is that it is allowing, I believe if the educational societies in New York decide, but that non-doctors can perform abortions, and that would be surgical abortions and also chemical abortions. So the idea is abortion for any reason at any time, especially because, like Doe v. Bolton, that was the companion case of Roe v. Wade, it has to do with health of the mother, and health is an extremely vague term that could mean anything.
Can mean anything, right.
To your point, I remember when this first was suggested, I think it was 2012, and I said, oh, in New York, it's going to pass, this is awful. But there was an amazing coalition of New Yorkers for Life, that came together to fight that law, and they fought so well for years and pushed it back. And it's just really sad that it finally did get passed, as you said, because the legislator changed to Democrat. And it's also sad that when we were having these elections, it wasn't really made into it wasn't part of the campaigning really by the Republicans. Mm-hmm. So when this happened, which, as you know, the governor signed it on the anniversary of Roe v. Wade and cheered, and he had the Freedom Tower lit up pink, which was terrible. People were shocked. We weren't shocked. You weren't shocked, but people were shocked. So it's kind of sad that, sort of like Roe v. Wade, you know, it happens and now there's a big backlash, but it happened.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's amazing. It's like they're taking a big eraser and erasing any kind of acknowledgement in any context of the reality of the child in the womb. Like you say, it's not only the context of abortion, strictly speaking. It's the unborn child being killed by other means, and it's the child born alive. It's like a big eraser. It's this radical denial of any kind of reality or value in the child. I mean, this is one has to sit back and wonder where all this attitude comes from. It's a disgusting thing.
It truly is, and I do think people are shocked. People, and that is maybe a silver lining, if you could say that. I think it's woken a lot of people up who maybe didn't want to take a stand or didn't like abortion but didn't really want to get involved. But many people are saying, but I don't agree with this. This is too far, and it's shocking. And for that, maybe, I mean, thank God it's shocking people, because it should.
We need to get people out of the middle. We need to get them out of that state of indifference, and that's what's happening here. It's happening across the country. Well, for those viewers and listeners that are just joining us, we are talking with Maria McFadden Mafucci, who oversees the Human Life Foundation in New York, started by her dad, the late James McFadden, and I always remember reading his materials as I was getting involved in the pro-life movement. So
that's great.
Really fond memories of him. Yes, and the Human Life Review, of course, we talked about that. But friends, we want to talk now about how some of the people in New York are fighting back now against this extreme law. And Maria, I saw this in an article that you recently wrote about what happened in Putnam, New York. Tell us about this.
So this is actually a really great story, and before I get into the legislation, give you a little background. Putnam is a fairly small county in the Hudson Valley. It's about an hour and a half outside of New York City. It's about an hour north of where I'm sitting now, because I live in Westchester County. And it's now, I believe, the only Republican legislature left in New York. There was actually an article in the New York Times about it, how it's been able to resist becoming the wave of all the counties becoming Democrat. And it has a really wonderful history. And I sort of found out almost by accident at a Knights of Columbus event. I was given an award by the Westchester Putnam Knights, and I was talking about Cuomo, and a gentleman then said, we are having a vote next week, and we really want pro-lifers to come out. So this county of Putnam, which is fairly small, I think 100,000, they introduced a resolution in the health area. When they first introduced it, the health committee, rather, there were a lot of pro-abortion people who came out and kind of overwhelmed the assembly there. And so the call went out for people to show up to the full legislative meeting when they would vote on it. Mm-hmm. And so after I heard about it, my colleague and I went up there. It was Tuesday evening, April 2nd, I think, and it was just amazing. It's this picturesque town, Carmel, which is in the county, a historic courthouse, and pro-lifers showed up in droves. Some of us got into the chambers, a lot didn't, and they were standing in the hall, and we were singing Amazing Grace, and then we were all very good in listening to the procedures. And then there's now one Democrat on the legislature, and she argued a lot and about this, but all the other legislatures agreed and voted on it. So it's important because it's not binding. It's a resolution against the RHA. It's not a law, but it's the type of spark that can create a fire, really, in New York. And it's wonderful when you think of historically, because it's or even biblically, it's David and Goliath. But it's a small group of really brave people, and they wrote an eloquent, or very factual, clear resolution why the RHA is awful and unfair, and they stood up for what they believed in, and so did the other citizens of Putnam County. So the hope is that this will spread. and then to other counties, and we've heard rumblings that it will. But I think the other thing that's really interesting about this is that the pro-abortion lobby put a lot of effort into trying to foul this up. Because they know it means something.
Yes.
You know, they know that a spark can cause a fire. Cuomo must know that a spark can cause a fire. And of course, as you know, last weekend in New York City, we had the largest pro-life gathering in Times Square that's ever been. Focus on the Family and March for Life had Be Alive from New York. And the fact is, because Governor Cuomo was so gleeful in signing this horrible law and celebrating it, it's really gotten people focused on New York as sort of an epicenter of this fight. And, you know, Governor Cuomo famously said a few years ago that pro-lifers weren't welcome in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that's ridiculous. He doesn't own New York.
Right.
He doesn't own the Freedom Tower. And, you know, that's America's Freedom Tower. And New York is a big state. It's not just the city. The city is it's a huge city, but it's a big state. So I'm hoping, and at the Human Life Review, we're educational. We're trying to educate other people in New York and in the country that look what's happening here. You know, it starts with Putnam County, and then it's going to be other counties. And maybe it's like we've reached a point where also Republicans will say, no, this is too much. We have to make abortion an issue because this is just too much. This is not what New York is about. This is not what America is about, and we have to push back.
You know, the people have to get involved in and understand better the very, very local mechanisms of government. This is one of the lessons, it seems to me, that comes out from this, is that people were able to gather there on the county level and do something which, you know, not every activity has to be, strictly speaking, legislative. This is a resolution, but it gives people a voice. People always want to know, how can I raise my voice against this? They want to feel like they can do something. And making a resolution like this is an excellent way to do that on a very local level. And it expresses really what matters in government, and that is where the people stand. So this was very encouraging to hear. And the wording of that resolution, how would people be able to get hold of that? You have that there on your website?
Yes, we have it on our website. I'll have to, I know we sent around a press release and had a link to it.
Yes, that's where I saw it. Right.
Yes. And the wording, well, if not after the show, I'll make sure that you have it.
Yes. And we'll make it available here too. We'll put the link. We'll put the link here with this program. But it's you know, this is an example, like you said, for others to gather together on a local level and to take steps like this. And then people can take a resolution like this, and then they can pass it along on their own and say, yes, this represents how I think as well. And then, you know, reproduce it in letters to the editor, in social media posts,
Absolutely.
in other articles. Clergy can preach from it. I mean, this is where the voice of the people needs to rise up. You know, Janet Morana, our executive director, and she always talks about her New York roots as well, growing up in Brooklyn and then living on Staten Island, where she connected with me at the very early beginnings of Priests for Life. And she reminds people, you know, when she's been talking about this law in New York and these developments, she reminds people that we used to have in New York a right to life party altogether. Tell our viewers a little bit about that part of our history.
Well, I'll be honest, Father Frank, I don't know that much about the Right to Life Party. I think a lot of that was before my time. I do know that we had one of the most wonderful pro-life senators ever from New York, Senator James Buckley.
Yes.
Who I worked on his campaign, I think, in high school.
Oh, did you?
Opening mail. He is, and then went on to become Judge Buckley. And I think that's a big thing for us to realize that that can happen. This was in the
Exactly.
70s in
Right.
New York,
Right.
and he wrote one of the first human life amendments, which I think we had his testimony in the first issue of the Human Life Review in winter 75.
Nice.
And of course, there have been many human life amendments, and none of them have been passed. Um, but yes, there was a right to life party. Now there is the Conservative Party,
Right.
which is a right to life party.
Yes.
And I think that again, maybe because of Cuomo's overreach, I'm hoping that Republicans in New York State and conservatives, or Republicans will take more of a cue from the conservatives and stand up for life, and not just for abortion. The next thing that Cuomo is going to be, trying to get through is the Medical Aid in Dying Act, which he supports as well, which is also, unfortunately, the polls in that one, a lot of people do support it because I don't think they understand it.
No.
That they're giving doctors permission to kill. And it was interesting because Cuomo came out for this in a radio interview, and he said, well, this is a necessary law because people are living longer and medicine is getting better. So if you really think about that, he's saying we're living longer, where medicine's better. It's not really that people are in this terrible pain and want to die. It's that this is too expensive. So I think that we need to really wake up. And as you said, on the local levels, because people who push laws, that's where they start. You can't get discouraged if only a few people are showing up. You have to give those few people a message. But yes, we have to have, there's no reason that New York can't welcome life again, at least welcome the struggle the way we used to do when we had a right to life party.
Yeah, that's right.
It shouldn't be foreign.
Well, I remember speaking last year up in Albany at one of the pro-life rallies that was taking place, and that's the point I made in my remarks back then, which was that when we talk about the right to life, we're talking about a principle that is rooted in the very origins of the nation, and that if you break it at one point, you've broken it at all points. The sanctity of life, the dignity of the human individual is absolute, and so it can't be applicable in one place and not applicable someplace else, because then you've broken the principle. It's not that universal principle that our founding fathers recognized. So I was saying in my talk right there in front of the Capitol, said, but the pro-life movement has the goal of applying this principle once again, not just to some parts of the country, not where being pro-life goes along with the current, but rather in every state and every square mile and every square inch of the United States of America. And so obviously that includes New York. And as you said, it's a big state. I mean, there are areas in New York that are, we have all different kinds of geography, right? And we've got the very rural sections, as well as of course, the great skyscrapers of Manhattan and, everything in between. And we've got the full spectrum of ideologies and beliefs as well. And there's a lot of strong pro-life values among the people of New York. It's sort of like when we go out to San Francisco for the Walk for Life each year, and one of the themes that keeps coming across there is, well, the pro-abortion people think they own San Francisco and they think they own California, and it's simply not true. And the pro-life people make their presence known, make their views known, and that just has to be a constant activity and response to this problem.
Absolutely. I think there's also a lot of misinformation. I mean, if you look at, pro-abortion activists, the pro-abortion hugely profitable business, and people like Governor Cuomo and how they present things compared to the reality. For example, the myth that the pro-abortion activist in New York is saying is about the RHA, that well, it's only in very rare cases, and no woman would ever use this for anything but, a terrible story with non-viable fetus. Well, that's not true at all.
No.
I mean, because there's nothing in the law to keep someone from having an abortion up to birth. So, it's just not realistic, obviously, if we have good people and we have bad people, and most of us are somewhere struggling in between. So this thing like, oh, no woman would do that, it's ridiculous, but I really think that a lot of people, including New Yorkers who may be Democrats, liberals, because they don't want to, they're uncomfortable. We know from the polls that most Americans and most New Yorkers are uncomfortable with abortion after 20 weeks. So do they really support this law up to birth? No, but I think many kind of just like didn't deal with it. And I'm hoping that people are realizing that by not dealing with it and not taking a stand, you actually are taking a stand, because you're helping the radical laws like Cuomo's be brought in,
That's
and
right.
now we have to fight a law that's been brought in. So I think there's a lot of room in every state and in New York for education and, really letting people know what has been ushered in and how much of it has to do with profit motives, and also I really think an attack on motherhood itself, which is not going to help any of us.
Yeah, exactly.
Every Olympic star, every movie star, actor, they always come out and they thank their mom, because that's the person, right, who gave them the love and most of the time and nurturing, and this whole the angry women who are abortion is normal, shout your abortion. It's really an attack on motherhood itself, and the beauty of motherhood and the beauty of the mother-child bond, and what kind of a society are we going to have if, to be a politically correct feminist, you have to kind of like hate motherhood, and that's just it's not going to work, and it's definitely un-American.
It is. It makes no sense. But like you said, we are starting to see this backlash against these extreme policies, and what was done there in Putnam County was a real encouragement, and we do want to both pray and work together to see that spreads, and not only as a reaction within New York, but as an example to other states where people can speak up in this way against these extreme policies. So
we will be following it in New York, and we will spread the news when other counties follow suit, which I'm sure they will.
Yep.
And stay tuned for that.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Maria. Friends, we've been chatting with Maria McFadden Mafucci from New York City with the Human Life Foundation and the Human Life Review. Maria, remind them once again of the website.
Yes, it's www.humanlifereview.com. We have many, many wonderful things on the website, wonderful blogs, reflections, and you can find out about subscriptions, which are $20 for a digital subscription plus all our online archives, and $40 for the handsome journal coming in your mailbox 4 times a year. And finally, our next Great Defender of Life dinner is October 10th in New York City. We're honoring Helen Alvarez and Rich Lowry, and it's a really wonderful evening when like-minded people get together in the heart of New York and say, we love life.
It is a great event. I've been there myself, as you know, and look forward to joining you for that once again. Thanks
Wonderful.
again. Blessings, and
Okay.
we will see you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is my body, an empty shell without your love. I see you in the face of every child. This is my body, but you are always in my heart, always in my mind. If I could choose again, there'd be no choice for me but you. my body. You cannot tell me what to do. It's not up to you. I will decide. This is my body, and I alone will choose. If this life within me lives or dies, this is my body. I'll do what I must do. This is my life. I will not sacrifice my life for you.
This is my body given up for you, that you might live eternally. This is my body, yet thy will be done, not mine. Broken as the bread, crushed as the wine. This is my body. I do what I must do. I give my life a sacrifice of love for you. This is my body given up for you.
I have the right to choose. I have so much to lose. Don't tell me what to do.
This is my body, that thy will be done, not mine.
If I could choose again, there'd be no choice for me but you. I don't know you. I'll never hold you. You're always there, awake or in my dream.
I give my life.
This is my life. I cannot sacrifice my life. I would do anything for you. I can see no other way. The choice is me or you.
Father, forgive them. They know not what they do.
How can I forgive myself for what I've done to you?
My wounds have set you free. Do this in remembrance of me. This is my body given up for you, that you might live eternally. This is my body, yet thy will be done, not mine. Broken as the bread, crushed as the wine. This is my body. I do what I must do. I give my life a sacrifice of love for you.
I give my life. I'll give my life a sacrifice.
A sacrifice of love for you.
Would you like some more coffee?
Sure.
Hope you enjoy the show.
Thanks. I know I will.